Welcome to the Lucas Rockwood Show. I'm your host. I'm a yoga teacher, a trainer. I'm a serial entrepreneur, a father. But first and foremost, I'm a student, and this show is about me learning. It's about me scratching my own itch. I go into the world and I find PhDs and medical doctors, yoga teachers, movement specialists, nutritional coaches, anybody who's got information that I think will help you live a more passionate, purposeful, healthful life, and I bring them on the show. This week's show is an exception. It's a solo show. It's just me. I've only done one of these in 2019, so it's my second solo show, and the reception is usually good. Usually I think, hey, nobody's going to be interested in just me talking, but turns out some of you are. So hopefully this one will be interesting as well. I just finished up a full month of training here in Barcelona, in-person trainings, and it really, somewhere along the line, we were having an evening session, and somebody said, how long have you been doing this? I said, this is my 13th year training teachers, and it doesn't even seem possible. I don't even feel old enough to be doing something for 13 years, but it's happened. And so I thought that was an interesting milestone. 13 years is really a career, and it's certainly been a very significant body of work for me. If I look back at all the things I've done, whether it was my corporate America work or running restaurants, working as a nutritional coach, opening yoga studios, this podcast, the thing that really stands out as a highlight for me, and the thing that at least up until now really turns my gears, is this training of teachers. And it really loops back to the way that I always open the show. In order to train teachers, I have to become a very deep student, and it pushes me to learn at a level that I've just never had, whether it was in personal study or academic study. I've never had that kind of pressure. And it's really exciting and rewarding, and it hasn't gone down at all. In fact, it's just gone up and up and up. And the level and depth and simplicity and clarity that we have in our courses now is just really exciting for me. And so I've learned some lessons about learning. I've learned a lot of lessons about people and group dynamics. I've learned a lot of lessons about transition and change in life, and I thought I would share those with you here. It's a really unique experience that I've had now. Over 4,000 teachers in the flesh have been with me, either in Thailand, in the US, in the Philippines, in Holland, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and here in Spain, of course. Don't know if I'm missing a country. Iceland. I'm probably missing some other country. I'm not sure. But over 4,000 teachers have trained with me in the flesh, and it's a lot. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people to be in front of with very, very specific content and very, very specific objectives. So I think I have some learning here and some observations that will be useful to you, whether you're working in a corporate setting, whether you're a health coach or a yoga teacher or a personal trainer yourself, or whether you're just a lifelong learner like myself. So let's dive in. I'll give you a little backstory. So 2006, I opened my first yoga studio in Koh Samui in Thailand. Koh Samui is a little island in the Gulf of Thailand. It's about an hour flight directly south from Bangkok. As if you're heading towards Singapore, there's 3 little islands there, and Koh Samui is the one with the airport. Opened a studio and a restaurant there in 2006. And I needed more yoga teachers. And the reality is that it's really hard to hire yoga teachers, and that really hasn't changed, because most teachers, they go to these courses, which are like adult camps, where you sing songs and you eat lentils and you put on an orange robe, and at the end they give you a piece of paper and you take a photo, and they call you a yoga teacher. Unfortunately, they just can't lead a class, and I don't say that to be cynical. it's just the reality. I'm hiring right now in the studio, and we're doing interviews, and most people can't teach a class, no matter how many of those little pieces of paper they bought. They just can't do it. And so we needed to train our own teachers. So the course itself was really a human resources function more than anything else. And surprise, surprise, that went over really well, because when you start training people with real world skills, people get really excited. And the interesting lesson learned there is the majority of education, whether it's primary school or whether it's trade school, whether it's university, the majority of stuff we get trained in, it really doesn't train us to actually work in the field. And I think that's a big problem. There's a lot of people criticizing education system right now, and I don't have any big ideas about that. I don't know enough about it, and it's really difficult for me to be critical of something that seems so positive. But at the same time, I do see less and less people with real skills, hard skills, meaning I can do this. And in my case, I can get up in front of a group of 30 people and I can lead them for 60, 75, or 90 minutes through a class where they will feel something. They will, open their body. They will clear their mind. They'll follow their breath. It's really a significant skill. And I don't meet a lot of people who have those hard skills anymore. There's a lot of soft-skilled people. And there's value in soft skills, but there's a real lack of hard skills from my observation. So that's why we started it. That's why I started it, and we started training teachers. And fast forward today, like I said, about over 4,000 people all around the world doing all kinds of really interesting things. And so I'll jump into some of the things that I've learned, and hopefully they'll be helpful for you. The first thing that I observed is that age, background, and physical ability were in no way predictors of success. And when I first started training teachers, I assumed that the 23-year-old fit young girl was going to be the best yoga teacher, and it was not the case, and it's not the case now. In fact, it's almost guaranteed that someone will surprise me every single course. Sometimes it's the person who has overcome the most physical or lifestyle adversity. Sometimes it's the person who's the youngest or the oldest. The youngest trainee we had was 16, 17, the oldest was 73, and so it really had a big variety. When it comes to teaching, it's similar to coaching. It's a very different skill, and so the doing and the teaching and the coaching are very different skills, and this is why a professional boxer, their coach probably wouldn't last 10 seconds in a round with their athlete. This is why, Michael Phelps' swim coach, again, he probably couldn't take 3 strokes and, Michael would be all the way across the pool, but still can be a really amazing coach. And this is a really counterintuitive reality, is that you can be very skilled and very effective at teaching without necessarily having exceptional physical acumen in what you're teaching. This is really liberating for people, especially these days where we get a lot more people coming at different stages of life. Some people are getting into movement later in life. Some people are overcoming car accidents and injuries and multiple, pregnancy complications and all kinds of things that are very real physical limitations, and they're concerned that they're not going to fit the image of someone they see on Instagram. And the reality is that has never been and will never be a hindrance to becoming a great teacher and a great coach. And there's many things like that. And I guess where I see that playing out for those of you who are not in the field is you can probably be a really great manager and leader of a creative team without being creative. You can probably be a very good manager and creative director of a software development firm without knowing how to do code. That's certainly applicable. And while it's a little counterintuitive, it's a very important thing to remember is that the skills needed to lead, to coach, to train, there's a lot of overlap with the skills needed to actually do the trade, but there are 2 separate skill sets, which is counterintuitive at first, but if you actually dig into it, it makes sense. Here's the next thing that I learned is that passion and commitment really trump everything. When I look back at those 4,000 graduates, the people who are doing the best, the studio owners, the trainers, the people who have written books and ended up in magazines and doing really great things, it's definitely passion and commitment that are the rarest things that you'll find, and that's what takes people the furthest. When we do goal setting in the courses and when we talk about what people want to do, it's usually less than 10% of people have a very clear idea. And this is something that, again, I think really you'll find true in any industry, any walk of life, is most people, most of the time, have no idea where they're going. They have no idea what they'd like to accomplish. And because of that, their outcomes are very unclear. Things could go well, things could go badly. Probably they'll get a little bit of both. Where they'll end up, well, they'll go with the flow and things will probably work out. Things usually work out. But they probably won't work out to the fullest potential that someone has without that passion, without that commitment. And this is the one thing that I don't know how to engineer. I've never been able to instill passion in someone. I've never been able to teach passion. It's something that you just have to find. And it's a real challenge if you don't have it. And I think we've all come to a place in life where things feel dull. Colors feel dull and things seem boring. and nothing seems interesting. You turn on Netflix and all the shows are terrible. You open up Amazon, try to find a good book, and nothing there is lighting you up. On a Saturday, you're unsure what to do. Everything seems ho-hum. The doldrums is something that affects all of us. And that's why whenever I meet a student who's just lost their mind for yoga, they're going to all the classes, they've got all the gear, they're signing up for all the workshops, I always just encourage them to go as deep and as far as you can with that, because that passion, it can just lead to so much. It's so magnetic. And so my big takeaway from that is whenever I get passionate about anything, I try to go as deep and as far with it as I can. I'll give you some specific examples. Right now, I'm really, really into anatomy and physiology, and I've always studied this as part of yoga training, but suddenly I'm just going deeper and deeper and just kind of obsessed with the inner workings of soft tissues of the body in a way that I wish I had been when I started my yoga journey, but I just wasn't. And so I'm really allowing myself to go as deep as I want. And so that means nerding out on YouTube videos, reading really, really academic, boring textbooks, doing palpation on my own muscles and getting body work done and all this kind of stuff. And so my big takeaway from that maybe is applicable to you now is if you feel yourself really, really passionate about wakeboarding, or really, really passionate about fly fishing, or really passionate about, I don't know, agile work process, or really passionate about whatever it is, WordPress, whatever it is, go really deep with it. It's such a rare thing, such a magnetic thing. And of all the things that are predictors of success, for me, in this experience that I'm sharing with you, it's been one of the biggest. The next big learning, which is obvious once you think about it, but at first glance it's not, is that yoga training is never really about yoga. And I think this is true for almost all industries. You know, I know people who work in fashion. I know people who work in nutraceuticals. I know people who work in office supply manufacturing. Sounds super boring, but the business is never the business. The work is never the work. The passion is never the passion. I'll give you a specific example. I mentioned fly fishing already. Growing up, I had a couple of friends who were really into fly fishing. And fly fishing is so little about fishing and so much more about being quiet and alone in nature. And that's a really obvious example. But a non-obvious example is what is, high-level accounting? Well, it's high-level problem solving and logic and organization. And so thinking about what it's really about. And what I see with yoga students is it's almost always about personal growth and transformation. It's almost always about being around another group of adults who share your passion for silence and stillness and balance in life. You being around a group of adults who aren't focused on drinking, which is so rare for adults. And it's almost never about yoga. Whatever you're into right now, again, whether it's reading or whether it's Netflix or whether it's CrossFit or whatever you're into, I think it's really helpful to try to figure out what it's really about, because if that thing fades, if you get sick of CrossFit or if you stop your interest in Game of Thrones, maybe you can find that same buzz, that same emotional, chemical, neurological hit from something else. If you figure out that, the fly fishing was just about getting into nature, maybe you can get into backpacking or cross-country skiing or who knows what it is. The next big takeaway from all of this training is that teaching is a meta skill, and speaking and communicating are also meta skills. I would throw these teaching, speaking, communicating, top 5 skills at least for everyone. It doesn't matter what you want to be, what you want to do in life. If you can communicate and speak well, if you can teach something to another person, it really makes everything you're trying to do better. It makes you a better learner. It makes you able to work with groups better. It makes you able to cross borders better. So many different ways that this plays out. When people come to a course and they're not sure if they want to teach and they're just going through this for personal growth, I always just encourage people to go as deep as you can, because no matter what happens, if you learn to be an effective communicator, and even more importantly, if you learn to communicate a skill by teaching, this will play out positively in everything from parenting to PowerPoint presentations to everything in between. Group dynamics are something that I've observed over the years and I've studied, and I find them really, really bizarre and fascinating. And there's different thresholds where group dynamics will arise. And so the dynamics of an all women course, for example, is quite unique. The dynamics of a less than 15 people course is quite unique. The dynamics of a 40 or 50 person plus course is quite unique. Things change with gender and size and number, set and setting, all of these things. But one of the things that I've seen really consistently is that when you're standing in front of a group in a public speaking, in a teaching, in a communications role, hidden insecurities arise right away. Insecurities about your voice, insecurities about your body, insecurities about unresolved trauma in your past. All this stuff really gets pushed to the surface. The added stress of a group of peers who you respect looking at you and inevitably judging you, it really pushes all of that stuff front and center, which can be really, really healthy and really positive, assuming it is, in fact, a positive group of people. And so otherwise together people, high-powered executives, very, very, very successful parents and executives that come to the course, and they'll break down in front of a group teaching something silly like breathing or sun salutes. And it's very interesting to see that in certain settings, we're able to hide our insecurities. In a setting where you're put on the spot, suddenly you realize that you have more work to do. And again, it's not really about the yoga. It's about thinking about yourself and personal growth. One of the biggest things I've observed over the years is that people who come to yoga training courses are really desperate for real friends and real connections. Everyone who comes to my courses tends to have a really complicated life with international travel and business and kids and work and family and all these things, full. And yet somehow the real connections with real people who they can relate to pretty consistently are lacking. And so people have friends by default, meaning their friends are the people they grew up with, or their friends are the parents of the friends of their kids, or their friends are their coworkers in the office. And they have family by default as well. Their sister-in-law lives next door, or their mother is close by, and they really lack real friends and real connections. And what I mean by that is real friends and real connections are people with whom, without a lot of small talk, you can jump right in and chat about things that really matter to you, whether that's religion or politics or the environment or your whacked out mental state or whatever it is. And you know that feeling right away when you meet people like that, and suddenly things just flow, and you can connect with people in a way that's so valuable. And suddenly you realize how much of your life is spent with really superficial, somewhat meaningless connections. Depressing but true. Big takeaway for me is the preciousness of time, and especially time for learning. And as we get older and older, this limited resource, this ultimate limited resource of time, becomes ever more apparent. Every single day, we all have the same amount of hours, but we don't really have the same amount of hours. Every year that goes by, there are more demands on our time, and they're not optional. At least for me, it's not optional to not be a dad. It's not optional to not be a boss. It's not optional to not take care of myself. You have these non-negotiable commitments that people on a path to self-actualization take on, and these are admirable things that we need to do. Take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your work, and they stack with time. By the time somebody reaches 35, 45, 55 years old, the stacking of responsibilities, the number of responsibilities that people have taken on is really pretty daunting. And this I see time and time again. We'll go, we'll do a hike with the group and just kind of chat about what people are doing in their work and their life. And it's just full on. And of course, adventure and play and learning as well. But just in terms of the stacking of responsibilities, of lives that depend on you, for someone on a path of self-actualization, someone who's really trying to live a full life, inevitably that gets really full, which means time is very precious, which means you want to spend that time with people you care about. You want to spend that time doing things that matter, and that's tough because most people I see spend a whole bunch of time on Instagram, a whole bunch of time watching Netflix, and a whole bunch of time with throwaway conversations over cocktails that they'd rather not be drinking. One thing that I see with groups of students is that being present is so hard and so valuable. And what I mean by staying present is being able to hold a conversation and go deep, being able to hold space for someone when they're going through something uncomfortable, being able to literally just have a one-on-one, a 1 to 3, 1 to 5 conversation with people. That is a real pitch and catch, an exchange of ideas, not just one person throwing out a one-liner or chiming in or just trying to get a word in, but actually communicating. It's so rare when you're with a group of people and you look around and you meet their eyes and you share something and people are present. This kind of thing often happens in these sort of group scenarios where people are pushing their limits, they're learning new things, they're counting on each other for support, they're being vulnerable, their insecurities are boiling up, and that's a pretty cool thing. That's a rare thing. On the flip side of that, self-sabotage is so prevalent, and this is something since 2006 that has fascinated, frustrated, and really upset me since the beginning. And self-sabotage looks like this. Student shows up for a course, super excited, day one, gets all their materials, next day they're drunk, call in sick, they're at the hospital, don't show up, and they bail out on thousands of dollars, they bail out on their family, they skip out on the course, and they never show up again. I could tell you stories all day long of weird and crazy self-sabotage behavior, all the way at the end of a 4-week program, someone not showing up for the last day, just disappearing off the face of the earth, never to call again. Somebody who's an integral part of the training experience, again, suddenly goes out on a bender, suddenly goes out on a binge, whatever people do when they go off the rails, and we all certainly have our habits and our patterns. It's pretty depressing to see how common self-sabotage is, where people are so fearful of pushing themselves, and I think even more so fearful of what happens if this goes well. Now I'm really going to have to show up in my life, that people bail out really consistently. And I guess I see this time and time again, and I think back to early in my career when I worked in theater and I worked in an office environment, and I think about how many projects I half-assed, how many times I showed up and I really wasn't there, how many times the clock hit 5 or 6 o'clock and I walked out the door, how many times I allowed someone else to take responsibility instead of me. And these little forms of self-sabotage where you don't just step up and take ownership of your life, I really regret those moments, and I have a lot of them. On my team as well, too, I think about who's the strongest people on my team, who are the people I can count on the most, whether it's in a training environment or the office environment, and it's the people who really consistently show up. And the people who self-sabotage are the people who consistently take one step back, the people who consistently find an excuse, who consistently find one little way to excuse themselves from responsibility rather than opening their arms and pulling all that responsibility in. The next thing that I've seen through all these courses is that people, random people from all over the world, have a huge capacity to be supportive and empathetic even to total strangers, and it's really inspiring to see. You have a grown person in front of a group, breaking down, crying, trying to lead a 60-minute class, and a group of strangers can really be supportive and empathetic in a very unusual setting, and it's really great to see because you don't see that usually, and I think it'd be great if we could replicate that in more settings. There's so little encouragement, so little positive feedback we get from anyone, whether it's from our friends or our relatives, even our significant other. They're so rare that somebody just says, I've got your back, I believe in you, you can do this, let me hold space while you work through it. Really cool to see. And again, with adults in a learning environment, to see that consistently, it really makes me question, why don't we do this for the people we care about? Why don't we do this for our loved ones? Why don't we do this for our friends? Like, why are we so closed up? Why can't we hold space, be supportive, give words of encouragement? So often we just bail. It comes right back to that concept earlier about being present. Here's one that I've been talking about a lot in the past year, and this is that your worst fears are usually true. Nobody wants to hear this, and this is not popular with internet memes, but it goes hand in hand with this idea that you're probably not enough, not right now. And this is another counterintuitive to internet memes, and what I mean by that is if you go online, you'll see all kinds of things that, fear is just an illusion, fear is all in your head, it's all about mindset. I don't think that's true. I think most of your fears are justified, and most of your fears are also true. You're worried that people think badly of you. They do. You're worried that you're getting older. You are. You're worried that you're not as smart as you used to be. Probably true. You're worried that you haven't worked hard enough. It's probably true. You're worried that you're not good enough to compete in your local market. Totally could be true, right? You're worried that your voice, your speaking skills are not where they need to be. Probably true. And so from there, my answer is, so what? Do it anyway, move forward. And very quickly, you can move forward despite your fears, because you can be stronger than your fears. And eventually, you can become enough plus. You can become more than enough. This positive thinking tyranny that's out there, I don't think it's helpful. Telling people they're good enough as they are, I don't think that's helpful. Telling people their fears are just false illusions in their mind, I don't think that's helpful. Some people have very real fears that are true. They're worried they will look foolish and stumble when they do their first public speaking, when they get up in front of a group. That's probably true. They're worried that they're not good enough, they're not strong enough, they're not practiced enough, that's also probably true. This condescending to people by having this weird, false, positive, smile or die narrative, I don't think it's helpful. To go back to being supportive and empathetic and encouraging, that's helpful. But telling people lies is not helpful. And there's a lot of there's a lot of lies being told in modern education system where everyone is a special flower and everyone's a winner. And there's a lot of memes going around where everyone should accept you as they are and you're good enough as you are. You were born good enough. Maybe not, right? Maybe you're not good enough. I certainly am not. And I'm working towards being good enough plus, better than good enough. And I'm working to getting to a place where my fears are not crippling, but many days they are. And it's really, at least for me as a trainer, it's been really helpful for me just to look people in the eyes and say, hey, you're worried you're going to stumble on your words. You're right. You're worried you're going to go out there and you're going to struggle financially at first as a teacher. You're also right. Let's play out that worst case scenario and let's figure out what happens next. You're worried that you're not enough. You're worried that you haven't practiced enough. You haven't studied enough. That's probably true. If that's what you're worried about, that's probably true. So let's look at that really, and let's acknowledge that, and let's move through that. Admitting weakness is a strength. Admitting vulnerability, again, it's a strength. It's a place to work from. You have a realistic view of self-awareness, and from there you can go forward into a positive place. The next thing that I've learned is that people are really blocked with business, and I was blocked with business for years, and it's a strange thing. I never carte blanche recommend entrepreneurship. That's not what I'm talking about. But just open conversations about money and business and commerce and service and trade and products, how all of it works. People are really, really blocked. And people are mostly cogs in a machine. And I don't know why. This, I don't think, is doing anyone any service except for the machine. But again, this is not about becoming an entrepreneur. But this idea of understanding how a business works, especially the one that you work in, is really important, and almost nobody does it. You have people who've spent 20 years in an industry, and they don't really understand the basic math, like what are the margins like, what are the challenges, why does this business excel, why does it struggle? And that's really weird. That's a real lack of self-awareness. That's like when somebody has a swollen knee for 2 years and didn't notice, or when somebody is walking around limping and they didn't realize. It's that same kind of mindlessness that people have with their physical body, I see with business and in yoga specifically. People just don't know how things work, and I don't think there's an excuse for that. And that conscious or unconscious mindlessness is not doing anybody any favors. And my last big takeaway is that the best students, the best trainees, the most successful are people who learn to be coachable. And this is certainly true for me. And I was never coachable. I was always bullheaded and stubborn and a know-it-all. And I wanted to find my own way and make my own path. And it was really, really stupid. And when I'm acting stupid, I continue to do that to this day. And with students, I find the same thing. It's not that you shouldn't innovate. It's not that you shouldn't find your own path. But the quickest path to success is following someone else's path exactly as they lay it out, and then innovate later. The idea is first you imitate and then you integrate, and then you innovate. I'll say that again. So first you imitate your teacher, your trainer, your coach, your boss, your manager, and then you integrate it and you understand fully how it works. And then from there, someday, maybe, you innovate. I mostly just imitate and integrate. I'm not an innovator, and you don't have to be an innovator, but you really have to be coachable. And somebody who's not coachable is not ever willing to imitate or integrate. They just want to innovate, but they're innovating from a place of ignorance. And this is what I see happens a lot in the yoga community. There's a ton of innovation and not a lot of imitation and integration to back that up. So people are getting very, very creative without a strong base to go behind it. So those are my big takeaways. 13 years, 4,000 students, and no real end in mind. I'm hoping to keep going and continue on forward. If you want to learn more about what we do, just go check out yogateacherscollege.com. I publish a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff like that as well. Hopefully these lessons are something that can be applicable to you as well. They might be super specific to yoga market, but my thought was, as I was writing these down, I was just kind of reflecting for my team. I thought, you know what, I think there's a lot of universals here that could apply, whether you're working in an office job or you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a health coach or a yoga teacher, or even if you're just trying to figure out where to go next with your career. I think some of these takeaways might be valuable for you. So thanks so much for indulging and listening. As always, your questions, comments, and feedback are most welcome. You can email me always, podcast@yogabody.com. If you like this show, the best way to show your support is to share it. Share it on social media. Tag me. It's @LucasRockwood. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate all of your support over the years, and we'll talk to you soon. When I first started practicing yoga back in 2002, I was so stiff. I couldn't touch my toes. My fingers would come about halfway down my shins. When I sat on the floor, my knees were way up off the ground. My hips were so tight, and back bends were totally impossible. When I extended my arms above my head, that was already a really deep back bend for me. So I was really frustrated, and all my yoga teachers told me that yoga was not about flexibility, that I was focusing on the wrong things. And I got really frustrated because that was easy for them to say. They were already flexible. I was really struggling, and everything I did in yoga was about flexibility, because every single thing, whether it was sitting on the floor or any kind of basic forward bend, standing pose, anything really, I couldn't even begin to practice because I was so locked up. And so I started doing a lot of research. I started talking to a lot of people outside of the yoga community, specifically gymnasts and dancers, and people who are a little more comfortable talking about mobility training. And very quickly, I started to learn that in order to make flexibility gains, you really need to supplement your yoga practice. And even the yoga teachers I talked to who were very flexible, who developed it later in life, when I actually saw behind the curtains what was going on, all of them were doing supplemental stretching in the evening. And there were some things that all of these people, whether it was the gymnasts or the dancers or the yoga teachers who had discovered flexibility later in life, the things that I found consistently were they were doing practice outside of their practice, meaning supplemental stretching. All of them were using long hold passive stretches. And then very quickly, I learned how to add a couple of other interesting things onto that practice, including breathing and time under passive tension. And essentially, I came up with a protocol that really helps you to open up your body. I call it gravity yoga. I've been teaching it now for 12 years, something like that. And it's really, really effective for hamstrings, for locked up hips, for a stiff back, shoulders. And we've been teaching it to students all over the world. We teach it in my studios here in Barcelona. It's a very, very popular class. And for the first time ever, I'm having a gravity yoga teacher training. And it's an online program that teaches you how to work with clients in a 60-minute guided class, or how to work with athletes or CrossFitters or yoga students who are stuck in short bursts to supplement whatever else they're doing. So you can work privately or in yoga studios, fitness centers. I'm really excited about this program. It's heavy on anatomy and biomechanics. We dive deep into sequencing. We walk you through pose by pose exactly how to teach this, and we also give you all the why behind the how. It's really a great program. To learn more, go to gravityyogatraining.com. Course starts soon. I'm super excited. We have a question from listener JC. JC says, Lucas, what do you think is better, krill oil or fish oil? I can't really figure it out. They're both really expensive. JC, it's a great question and a really important note. Fish oil is expensive, and it should be expensive. It's a complicated thing to get. It's coming from fish, right? And so to get those encapsulated, to get a high quality fish oil, it'll cost a lot. How much is a lot? As much as 50 cents per day. So let's say like a month supply might cost you $15 or more. Can you get cheap fish oils? Yeah, but I wouldn't get them. They're most often rancid. They're not stored properly. If you go to like a big box pharmacy, like a Walgreens or Walmart or something, you'll see big giant bottles of fish oil in clear bottles, and very often that fish oil is rancid. Fish oil should be pretty expensive, including krill oil and algae oil. They're all pretty expensive for a high quality oil, just like food oils. You can certainly go to the grocery store and buy a cheap cooking oil, but that's not going to be healthy. You want a high quality oil. The same is true with fish oil. And how much should you take is the second part of this question. This is really difficult to ascertain, but I will say it's absolutely possible to take too much. If you take too much, your blood gets really thin. And I've certainly done this, and the side effects for me are when I do handstands, I'll get little capillary bursts underneath my eyes. Turns out this is a thing. It totally happens when your blood gets too thin. I have really thin blood anyway. So how much is too much? Well, that depends on you. But for most people, somewhere between 800 milligrams and 1 gram of a combination of EPA and DHA is a relatively safe place to start. But you'd want to check with your doctor for sure. If any of you are on any kind of heart medications or blood thinners or blood pressure stuff, for sure check with your doctor. But that should be a safe place to start. You'll read online about people megadosing, taking 2, 5, even 10 grams of fish oil a day. Aside from sending it straight to the toilet, that could potentially make your blood really, really thin. That could be problematic. These oils are very medicinal, very, very strong, so use with care. It doesn't matter if it's algae oil, even flaxseed oil can potentially be really, really potent. So use with care, use with moderation, and definitely check with your doctor and buy the expensive stuff. We have a question from a listener this week. A listener says, as a full-time yoga teacher, I often pick up colds and other bugs from my younger students. Sometimes they knock me out and keep me on the couch against my will. In good health, I do vinyasa yoga at least 4 times per week, yin once, plus some body training, body pump and swimming. When I get sick, I miss yoga. I worry that my fitness and strength will regress in the 7 to 10 days that I cannot get to the gym. What can I do in the interim when I don't feel up for a full 1-hour power class? Even a 1-hour yin class wasn't suitable for a cold, as I coughed throughout the entire class and felt terrible for disrupting others. Do you have a favorite at-home app? What yoga do you suggest for colds and being sick? This is a really great question, and it's super true. If you're a yoga teacher, you get exposed to all kinds of nasty germs. If you're a parent, I am, and you have young children, they're going to nursery school or primary school, you get every nasty bug that comes home, and no matter how much care you take care of yourself, you will for sure get hit. I've read all the research on this because I am like the quintessential man flu. Like I feel like my world is ending when I get the slightest little bug. And there's pretty good research around zinc, so taking zinc. There's decent amount of research around vitamin D. I'm not really sure. I take it anyway, vitamin D3 specifically. Sometimes people megadose like 10,000 international units. My new trick, which I swear by now, and I'm getting all my staff to do, my yoga teachers and stuff like that, is gargling and doing a neti pot. Neti is like an old-fashioned yoga nasal cleanse. You can also just buy those aerosol sprays for your nose, but with just salt. And I do it like crazy. I will gargle and I will wash my nose with salt like 3 times a day. Warm salt water flush through my nose and in the back of my throat. It's really helping me to ward off these bugs when a bug's going around. And it's been really helpful for me. And all the other usual stuff which you could think of, but that's the only other thing I can really recommend. In terms of exercise, I hear you. I feel the exact same way. I hate to miss, for me it's the worst part about being sick, if I can't breathe through my nose and I can't practice or exercise. Some things that I've played around with are cycling. Cycling can work pretty well. Or just do something you never normally do, like just go for like an hour-long walk or something like that. But at the end of the day, you can't control all things in the world, and once in a while you'll get sick, and the best thing to do is just make the most of it. But those are the 2 things I've been playing with. Take the kids for a really long walk, like a 1-hour walk. And I've also gotten into cycling. I find I can do that even when I'm not feeling so great. Hope that's helpful. Wash your hands, take some zinc. Hope you feel better.
This week's iTunes review comes from Rollo199 from the UK. Rollo199 says, I've been listening to the Lucas Rockwood podcast for over 2 years now. I can confidently say I've learned so much valuable information which has supported my personal nutrition and well-being journey, as well as assisted me in guiding students in my role as a yoga teacher. My personal favorites have been Susie Cameron, Dr. Jen Gonzalez, and Dr. Jolene Brighton, which all women should listen to. Lucas's broad-ranging topics and educated guests make for a captivating podcast each week. Thank you, Lucas, for your dedication to this show. So many of us have and are learning so much from it. Thank you, Rollo199. You have won the Yoga Trapeze. Please email us at podcast@yogabuddy.com and we will ship it to you.
If you're a regular Yoga Talk Show listener, you'll definitely want to get on my email list. Go to yogabuddy.com/sign me up. When you enter your email address there, we always have free giveaways every month. Yoga straps, water bottles, discounts in our shop, and all kinds of other things. When you sign up at yogabody.com/sign me up, I'll send you just one email a week with updates about the show, special offers, new courses, and valuable information that I think you'll find useful. So go to yogabody.com/sign me up to claim your free prize now.